Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of In the Pit with Lobo Tigre. Our victim of the day is Brad Rourke. He's the CEO of Scottie Resources. And these days, Golden Triangle exploration stories are all the rage, and he's got one, so I want to give him a chance to give us an overview. But as the YouTube stars out there have been teaching me, I should go ahead and put a brief admin note and say, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel and you're seeing this on YouTube, please hit subscribe so you'll be updated for future editions. And if you'd rather get this from our website, you can sign up for our free, no spam, I promise, no spam weekly digest. They're absolutely free of charge. Just give us your email, and I promised you I will treat it with respect. So, Brad, please give us the overview. What is Scottie Gold working on up there in the Golden Triangle?
Well, we're working on a bunch of things, and thanks for having me. But the main asset and what got me interested in this, this is being my fifth year now, is the past producing Scottie Gold mine. And to give a little history, Scottie Gold mine was a gold mine that ran for 3 years in the early 80s. Let's call it from 1981 to 1984. Produced a half ounce per ton. I lived in the area in a little town called Smithers and kind of got interested in the commodity space in mining. In around that time, around 2015, right before that 2016 head fake, let's call it. But, the things that attracted this to me was, at the time, Pritium was building a power line. I'm a founding shareholder of a company called Black Diamond Camps, and we had a bunch of equipment right up there and was servicing the building of this pipeline. So I kind of put two to two together as going, past producing gold mine, infrastructure going right through. That's what initially hooked me. And I started out as an investor, trying to help a couple local guys up there who'd been running these little junior mining companies for many years. And then 6 months into that, I ended up just taking the company over. Lucky enough, I had a bunch of time off previously, and I had the time to do it. So I kind of jumped into the mining game in early 2016. But anyways, to answer your question, it was a past producing gold mine, produced a half ounce per ton, only ran for 3 years. My due diligence told me that, gold went from, let's just call it $700 to $300 in a real quick turnaround in the early 80s. And this facility, or the Scottie Gold mine, was Don McLeod's first mine. But it really shut down because of they were paying 20% interest on a $20 million facility with the Royal Bank, of which at the time Tukey Angus was the lawyer for the Royal Bank, so he knows all about it. He's actually filled me in on lots of things. So that's the overview, how I got started. That way back when, like I said, I was an investor. I was just trying to help out a company, wasn't sure of the direction. What I didn't appreciate, because I didn't know much about the mining business back then, was 400 hectares wasn't going to excite anybody. Here we're going into my fifth year. We're pretty darn close to 25,000 hectares in two strategic pieces, and basically just a cleanup of an existing company. It had been called something else and was trading since 2008. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a good overview. Appreciate it. Let's before we move on to what you're doing now, let's talk a little bit more about the history. About 20,000 ounces for a few years. It's pretty small, high grade, but really small. So, why would that excite you? The area is dotted with stories like this of past producers that people have had another go at, haven't gone anywhere. I was mentioned to you before we spoke that I'm recalling the Lucky Shot mine at Full Metals. Speaking of the McLeods, right? Those guys know what they're doing. Here's this past producer. Okay, it's in Alaska, but and there's gold there, there's high grade, but it never really seemed to add up to something big enough to mine. What is it about this one that makes you think that could happen here?
Sure. So that's a good question, and I hopefully have a good answer for it. Let's say my due diligence. So I went and saw Peter Brown, was one of the first guys I went and spoke with. Tried to get some history because I was living in the area. Sorry, I'll turn that off. So I was living in the area. The evidence that I could find, there's only two guys that ever worked on the property ever. It was Don McLeod, and then Bruce McLeod gave it a couple years in, I'm going to call it 2003, 2004. And that's when gold was $600 an ounce and our dollar was reaching parity. So we couldn't find any evidence of property-wide exploration. Basically, from what I can see, and again, all I can do is the research that I've done, is they found a vein on surface, started mining. Yes, there's 700 holes, but they were all geared towards production, and no one ever actually went and had a look, as this is the whole thing, and tried to understand how the system worked. One of the reports that were done by a guy named Pantera, David Reese, he did a structural geology report there. And what caught my eye when I was doing these due diligence and reading up on all these things was the closest analog that he ever seen to SNP was Scottie Gold. It just wasn't explored in that fashion. And David Reese did his master's at the SNP mine when SNP was in its heyday. So that really kind of got me going. And then you have the Ross Beatties and such saying, if you want to find gold, you go to where it's found before. You have Ascot, which is the premier mine that I touched the southern, I touched the northern border of Ascot. And then I also touched the southern portion of Pritium. So that's kind of what my gut was telling me. Okay, I'm in between these two, quite well-known properties. I have a mine that I think, not saying that the work in the past wasn't done properly or anything, they just never ever looked at it and tried to model it or come up with a theory on how this deposit may lie. My whole plan, actually, it was funny because I ended up just putting my personal money into it. It was just, I self-funded it for a couple of years, and a couple of friends who were crazy enough to give me some money, although we've done well in the past in other industries. So my whole plan up until a year and a half ago was when Derek White went in and to start running Ascot, we knew that there's something really, really serious going on there. Derek White's a serious guy. He's a builder, right? And he come out from Quadra. So I was going, you know what? I think there's a really good chance the premier mine or the Ascot's going to give her a go. I always felt that Pritium wasn't getting the respect it deserved. Now, I lived in Smithers, so I have Seabridge, Pritium, all those offices are right there. And I'm going, well, I put $1 billion into there. They build this power line. What can go wrong? That was, again, my naive thinking back then. And then as I kept peeling back the onion, I'm going, oh my God, you're not in Kansas anymore. This is my first mining deal that I've done. That being said, I worked in the mining service industry for 10 years in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I staked Comess for HDI, but I mean, it's my name are all over the tags, and I've been on every staking rush at SNP, Bronson, SK, and that's what I did in my 20s. So,
okay, I'm glad you. Sorry, let me jump in and say I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be the next question. You just came into this and you're saying, "Oh, it's my first mining deal." Well, why should anybody invest in you if you don't know what you're doing? But what you're saying is you're not really an industry outsider.
No, I was in my 20s. I started off with foresters, and I was a dirty, rotten tree planter, and that's how I got familiar with the northern BC and fell in love with the town of Smithers. But then I learned, because of my surveying skills and such that I was doing in silviculture, I got picked up by this guy who's a mining service guy out of Smithers. And at the time, this is when mining was, I did all Pesm's work and, lots of HDI stuff. And so I worked with everybody, but I was a kid, right? I was 23 years old, thought mountaineering might be a calling for me. And I worked on the avalanche program at Comess. I kept that road open for a couple of years before I got married. So that was kind of the direction I was taking. But why would anyone invest with me? Why would you invest with anybody, first off? Because just because I've had past success. Now, this is not my first deal in the capital markets. It's just my first one in mining. I've had great success, and for people who may or may not know, I was the architect of the second largest IPO in the Canadian history. That's not a bad little check mark. So I put together a little company called Athabasca Oil Sands. I put the money and the idea and the concept together, and then pass that off. And I've done that with many companies in real estate development. So it's not that I don't have business acumen or have had some success in the past, and I've got failures in the past too. But most importantly, people still talk to me. I don't have too many people mad at me, right? Because you can't always win it.
All
But
right, fair enough. So when you came in, why hadn't work been done before? Like you have this high grade, known mine near other famous assets in the region. We had this tremendous bull run after the crash of 2008 all the way up to 2011. Why wasn't this asset advanced before?
well, this I was mentioning before was in Bruce McLeod's hand, which was Don's son, which has also told me something that needs to be looked at because the only two guys that ever worked at it was Don's son. So there had to be some favorable stories kicking around the campfire, or that's how I would have thought of it. But the answer to your question is the guys that I originally tried to go and help are kind of been in the business forever, and they just happen to have, at that time, 3 junior mining companies all within the Golden Triangle, and they were focused on other things at that moment. I didn't appreciate what all that meant. I was going, why do you have 3 companies in the same area? But now I've come to realize, again, just different business models. But the answer is they were just focused on another deposit. This was sitting there. They kind of, if you look at the history of this of the charts, and it kind of had this little blip, but no one ever actually put any effort into it. And then that was where I smelt opportunity. It wasn't something that had been recycled because again, easy to do due diligence on that things. These guys were just actually had different priorities, and you can only do so many things. So, and I think in my mind, what convinced me is they were just holding this for the right time. And I think they actually at the time thought they could get that mill running and pour gold. And that was perhaps what was the initial motivation for them holding it. But that was one of the reasons I got it. So they never really did anything. There's a little bit of work on the past company, but nothing of significance. So one of the first things I did is, so when I finally when I figured out I was going to lose all my money and I needed to take this company over, the first thing I did was I hired a company called Equity Exploration Consultants to model it. I mean, we had 20 boxes, banker boxes full of data, and I'm going, well, I understand how business works and stuff, but no one's going to believe me in geology, right? And nor would I expect them to. But if I sit on the shoulders of well-respected people, so that's one of the first things I did. I physically scanned like maybe 50,000 pages and tried to read them and get myself up to speed. But then what I did is I gave all that to Darcy Baker at Equity Exploration, and then for 2 years we ran it through Micromine, made a working model together. We've relogged all the core. We did all these things that the scientists want you to do, that the market's not going to give you any love for. But at the time, I was watching guys do really good work and not really get rewarded because we had a couple of those head fakes, and the market's doing this, and I'm going, wow, it's timing for me. Again, my whole plan was I was just going to find 500,000 high-grade ounces and sell it to Ascot on surface. That was, because we had a high degree of confidence that we could do that on surface, right? And with just a little bit of work, and that's what my team was telling me. Our whole world changed, though, in 2019 when we accumulated the rest of the land around the Scottie Gold Mine, which was held privately for 30 years. And that would fully answer a question that you asked earlier. Why now? Well, even Bruce McLeod didn't have the run room that we currently have. So we can excite a lot more quality investors to kind of go, look, we have a team, and we have an actual piece of land that no one's ever, district scale piece of property now. Because when I first started, and again, totally oblivious, and I'm so lucky I didn't get creamed, is that I got involved and I took it over. It was only 400 hectares. And I'm going, well, I'm driving around, well, it looks like a lot of land to me. But then when I started getting out and trying to check the boxes that people want to see, and luckily because of my past business experience, I kind of just went top down, and I went and saw the biggest guys in mining. I can get through those doors, and they're all just looking at me and just told me everything that's been wrong with it for years. And so what I've done is I just went out and tried to sew up those holes in the sales, and I'm at a stage now where I think we've got the support from the right people. I'm very happy with, the partners that are trying to help me along here. And now we have something that you could get somebody excited. But they didn't have that in the past. And when Don McLeod, he just found a vein on surface, with glacial retreat, and everybody's talking about glacial retreat and stuff. Well, we have it in spades, right? Because we're a little higher elevation. And if you look at some of our results from the new lands, and they're just surface results, but that's our first pass. And we were never going off some old reports and just going resampling the same place that someone might have done 10 years ago. It was virgin ground, and we just walked the margins of the glacier, and we were coming up with extraordinary. And I encourage people to go look at our website and such, and if you want to see super fantastic, encouraging results.
Okay. So, all right. So let's look at what you're doing now. Let me see if I've got this right. I did look at the presentation, and I have seen those very impressive pictures of the glacial retreat. And speaking of McLeod's, I've been up there at Red Mountain twice, and just in the intervening years, I could see where the glacier had retreated and exposed new mineralization that they followed up on before the SCOT deal. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I get that. But so let's be clear. Is the plan then to not just go after the old known resource and step out from there, but to do a whole regional exploration program and then follow up wherever deemed? Because it looks also like your high priority targets on your presentation are all near the old mine workings. So talk me through what is the plan going forward here?
I would say you're kind of right. Most of the work was always focused on one vein that produced all the gold, called the M zone on the Scottie Gold. We drilled one hole into that last season, and it was a very, very risky hole because there's 700 drill holes, but they were all underground, and so these are east-west structures, and they're parallel structures. But what Darcy Baker at Equity suggests, he goes, this is a 500-meter hole, but we're going to try and tag a vein that's 500 meters. But the only way to hit it perpendicular, we could never stage from underground unless we put a drift in there, and then it just gets, we just wanted to kind of see. So, one of those results was 11 grams over 11 meters, but it's kind of a pure step out from the actual vein that was producing all the gold in the past, which is, you can get excited about that 50-meter step out. If you look at what it produced in the past, and it confirmed our theory that I believe in the past, when the vein pinched out, these guys would stop drilling. But the theory is, what Dave Reese came up with is that these are reoccurring dilational zones or reoccurring sigmoidal loops. As long as you have strike, you got to keep drilling, and then these dilational jogs will open up along strike. And basically, they found one of these dilational jogs on surface, and that's what they've mined. And what Bruce did, the work he did, and it was great work. It was fantastic. But I think he just drilled the extension of that zone. Now, the Bow property, which is the Blueberry vein, which is one of our really exciting results, and then the Ben vein, which is a pure twinned hole. I'll just tell you that right now, hands up. But we told everybody we were going to do it because we didn't have any core to log, and all we had is these handwritten maps with some coordinates on it, but there was no drill collars, and someone had built roads, and we're like, well, let's just drill it right through where we think the heart of it is, just so we can see the rocks. Things that never happened in the past. They only assayed for silver and gold. We've done full elemental surveys, like, again, trying to look at this, step back and really look at it from a different point of view. It's not like the gold knows there's a border between Ascot and Pritium, right? And that's kind of my naive thinking that got me into this. I'm going, well, what the heck? And if you look at Ascot, their grades get better as they go north, in my opinion. Their grades are great everywhere, right? But we just, we're excited that they're doing as much work as they are and such. So I think, the Blueberry vein and the Ben vein, they're 2 kilometers away from the one zone that really has 90% of the work. And it had, 8 holes here, 5 holes there, and it was in the 80s. So we just kind of went out and we wanted to confirm some of that stuff because we never had the Bow property core. We could never find it. But the most exciting one from Thomas, I like the 11 by 11 on the Scottie. That's my favorite hole. But my PhD geologist likes the other one better, who knows way more about geology than I ever will. But, only because it surprised him turn to drill a little bit on the very last hole. And then that's where we found the 7.5 gram over 35 meters. And it's on surface. It's very shallow. Starts at about, I can't remember, 20 meters down. Anyhow, but that surprised him. He was actually trying to look at something else. So to him, that's a new discovery. And that's significant grades. So, this year we will follow up on those 3 zones that we hit and continue. I think this year it's our probability, our confidence level is a lot higher because we'll just step out and start trying to understand these things. We will certainly drill another 50-meter extension to the M zone, and then we'll start wedging those just to kind of really get feeling. And then the blue sky is on that domino zone, which is just right up down the other side of the mountain, same elevation as Scottie, but it's on strike, east-west striking veins. It's an east-west striking zone that we found, 700 meters by 200 meters. It's just the other side of the mountain. If we can make that connection, here's the hope and dream, and here's the blue sky. But if we can connect, if domino is in fact associated with the M zone to Scottie, then I think people can get really, really excited. But back 30 years ago, you could never get there. You could never, no one even knew.
This is in the Summit Lake claims that you just acquired, right?
Correct.
Right. So, and just again to be clear, you're not saying that it's going to be one zone all the way up there, but it's the same geology, these sigmoidal openings, and a repetition of that pattern down in that direction. Is that what you're looking for?
Exactly. And we're going to just, so far we took 2 years to put a theory together. The very first, and you're right, it was 2,000 meters was a very small drill program, but I decided on August 15th to do it. My whole plan was to drill the Bow and the Scottie, but then we got the Summit Lake lands, which we never ever dreamt. I tried to buy it for years and years and years, and it was just never for sale. The guy had money, but it was just a turn of events that I ended up, it was just luck, right place, right time, and maybe persistence. But I picked that up. So we threw away the drill program and going, well, now we get to go explore these new lands. And because we knew for certain that the geology went to the south, to the west, and to the north of the confines of the boundaries of Scottie. So when we sent out a team, we had a team of 6 guys and gals out there ripping around, and they're coming back and they're looking for peritite, or you can see peritite with the eyes. They're finding massive showings and they're excited. And then gold hit 1,500, and I said to Thomas, and it was August 15th, and no one had ever heard about me. I'd been up until that point. I never paid a commission on a dollar I ever raised for the 4 years. I just raised it myself, whether you knew me very well or my money. When I took the Summit Lake, I couldn't even buy any more shares because I was too close to 20%. So I was just lending the company money because I didn't have time to even think. I said, we have to close that. And I just lent the company money just so we could get that done. Gold hits 1,500. The geology team is really excited. I said, we're going to drill. I had 45 grand in the bank, and I phoned my buddy because I live in Smithers, so all the drilling companies are based out of Smithers, all of them, and it's tough. But I phoned John Shorter from Driftwood Diamond Drilling because he was drilling KSM at the time, and I knew they were just about finished, and I was trying to save money on mob costs, right? Because you got to mob and demob drills, and I said, hey, John, could you fit 2,000 meters in? So we didn't even decide to the 15th of August. And boy, are we glad that we actually did that. Although Thomas at the time was like, we finished October 17th. That's pretty dangerous for up there in the Golden Triangle. We were pushing snow to get the drills out and get everybody out safely. But we pushed that drill program through at the very last minute. And the very first time I ever paid a commission or actually went out. And then I went to Beaver Creek. I'd never been to Beaver Creek before. And I went there and I raised that first set of money. But what I found was, I was going to raise $1.5 million, and it wasn't a day, and I had 2.5 and turned down way more money because, again, it was kind of a fresh idea. No one had seen it. So I was pretty pleased. And then I've been banging the drum ever since. And we've had a lot, our drill results came through. We're pretty excited about that. Eric Sprott came in and gave us a little bit of an endorsement. And then we just released a flow-through financing not a week ago, and it was done in like minutes. I mean, I still got to close it, and I'm not popping any champagne corks yet, but I mean, the amount of interest and from the right people, more importantly, where it was, we're flattered, we're nice, but we still got to go put the straws in the ground.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's come back to the money question. But it's important what you just said, because one of the things I noticed is, okay, 2019 was a breakout year for gold. High grade past producer in Golden Triangle, and you only drilled 2,000 meters. It seemed like just. But if you have the new land package and you had to rejigger your drilling program, that does make sense. But again, just to understand where we go from here, the plan at this point is to follow up on the various targets based on your new theory and try to build ounces on all of them, or to try to keep regionally exploring, looking for more targets, or what are the deliverables that you would expect for this summer's field programming, assuming we can all work like normal?
Yeah. Well, I think that's another good question. We want to show the pathway, or the possibility of a pathway for a multi-million ounce deposit. That's our goal at this stage, right? Nobody would even knew who I was, budgetary, and I didn't start this company. So every share I have in this company, I bought, right? And you can go to CDAR and see it. My wife doesn't have a shoebox full of shares somewhere, because it was existing, for 6 years before I even heard of it. So I think, that's why the paltry and just kind of, I was cashing pop bottles in to keep the exploration program going for up until now. So I think this year could be a little bit of our breakout year. We have 5,000 meters planned, and we may decide that we can up that. And now it's all about just dilution and just kind of looking at what's that right level. Always take the money. I've heard this from everybody that I ask, and I run the company. My board runs the company. I just ask the questions and just kind of make sure I just let the stream divert to where it goes. I don't, but I go, I think we could see, we're doing 5,000 meters. We've laid out a very clear and concise program for 2020. We're, knock on wood, we're fully funded. Well, John Williamson's on my board, and he's like, Brad, more holes, right? Because he's going, they're fantastic targets. And so I think, the 3 zones that we were successful on, we'll step out from those. Just, we need to understand them a little bit more. And then we'll go to that domino, never been drill tested ever. You look at those surface results. If, in fact, we're blessed that we have, it looks as good underground as it does, or doesn't have to look as good. If it just looks somewhat interesting underground as compared to what it looks like above ground, we'd be very, very excited. But we're, again, it was an existing company, so.
No, I get it. I get it.
So it's dilution is one of the things I have to be aware of, and I don't want to just raise money. You do and you don't. So I'm trying to find that balance, right? I'm pretty cheap. I'm known as a pretty cheap guy, actually.
That's a good thing in this business. But we're not even thinking resource right now. The purpose of this program is to demonstrate and demonstrate the district scale potential and the multi-million ounce potential. We're not going to try to drill off Scottie and produce a resource estimate or something like that.
Not this year.
Not this year.
And I think the next stage in a perfect world is that's when I bring in that super strategic partner at a 20% level, and we have, I think what I've done is I have a theory on the evolution of financial markets and such, and we could talk forever if you want to talk macroeconomics, but I just think, and I could be wrong, but where I'm betting it is we need size as these juniors now, because, and so I'm building this. I have a district scale piece. We've never colored outside the lines. It's pretty easy to do due diligence if you can read a financial statement and such, and I've been building it so we can bring in the bigger, because it's, the reality is that we all get excited, but these things need to be done properly, and they need to be, there's lots of smoke in the Golden Triangle, and I've been running around up there for 30 years, right? And it's really easy to get excited, and the deposits are there. You just got to take your time, and so my whole goal is to build a company and not hang some paper on somebody, or do we go to that next evolution and pass this off to more capable hands? Perhaps, but not until I'm still incapable of adding some value here yet. But really,
I get it. So the strategic plan is ideally you demonstrate the potential of what you're working on. This interests one of the major players. They step in with like a 19% stake with a big whack of cash that then gives you and your major stakeholder there the serious funds needed to go off and really prove up what's there. That's the ideal world going forward. Okay, so and you just raised.
It's what I'm going to do.
There's a forward-looking statement. All right,
but it is what I'm going to do, and I've been saying it for years, and I just keep, I do what I say I'm going to do. I will find that partner.
All right. Yeah. So you say you got an endorsement from Sprott. That's a $2 million endorsement. That's not bad, and that's separate from the $3.5 million that you're just raising flow through, right? So you're bringing in $5.5 million right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and that's on top of what you had $1 million left in the bank. So,
no, I was getting down to. We were getting down to the nitty gritty. I think we spent all the money on the money that we did with the drill program in the fall, and I think I've done 14 transactions now. Like I say, I started with 400 hectares. I'm close to 25,000 now, so I pretty much know every piece of land, who's in control. I know the financial situation of everybody in the area, and just trying to sell the idea that we're stronger together than we are with all this patchwork of, there's all these miners and guys that have these little postage stamps just waiting for their ship to come in, when reality, because I really went from a top-down approach. I've been at all the top offices with the biggest companies, and one of the concerns that was relayed to me from the larger entities is like, they can't go in and consolidate because people just see dollar signs, right? Now, it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to get rewarded for it, but I mean, I heard that from enough of the majors and going, we love the area, we'd like to be there, but 4,000 hectares isn't not in our business plan. If somebody could do this, and so I kind of blind faith, and I said, well, I can do that, and so I've been really working on that really hard. So I've done about 14 different transactions, and it's not like I'm stopping. I mean, now it's quite funny. It's really been difficult for me and for everybody up there. The environment's been tough, and then just consolidating is everybody has their own ideas of what they're worth, and that's really difficult to overcome for all of us, right?
That actually brings to mind, if you don't mind, Brad, that brings to mind, how many First Nations do you have to deal with?
I just have one. There's more than one. There's more than one in each nation, But I I deal with the Nisga'a Nation. Most dominantly, my land's in Nisga'a territory, but I'm right on the border of Tahltan Nation as well. But remember, I've lived there. I know all these people personally and have fantastic relationships. Hank and Asp and I were on the phone yesterday, and like I say, I coached every kid in hockey and da. So I'm kind of, I've got great relations. Knock on wood. I've got deep roots in all the communities. So far, so good.
Fair enough. Right? No, but and importantly for an outsider, both of those names are known. Both of those are First Nations that have worked with the resource sector before.
Oh, both are super fantastic. I mean, the Tahltan have mining in their blood, and Chad Day is doing a heck of a job, and everybody in the community. I mean, that community's doing well, and they're managing it quite well. The Nisga'a, not as in tune with the mining or as advanced, but I mean, Tahltan have been mining forever. But like I say, I've had no issues, but I've been, again, in the area, and I sat on, when they're trying to put a pipeline up northern BC, I sat as an independent, as a liaison between nations and industry. And so everyone kind of knows me, and I never had my hand in anybody's pocket. So like I say, if they don't know me, we have common friends throughout the whole north. So,
all right. So speaking of hands in pockets, you've mentioned several times your own investments in this. I'm very glad to hear that. Skin in the game is something I always insist on as an investor. Are you willing to tell us exactly how much skin you've got in the game? How much of your own money have you put into this deal?
Sure, but just don't show it to my wife. No, and it's funny because, I think it started with $250,000, right? And how many times did I say, I'm never putting another dollar in, right? But I I figured I was up at $1 million, but I was lending the company money. I don't know the exact dollar, but it's $800,000 plus. Like, and I bought I bought at higher levels, $100,000 than it is now, and multiple times. So, and that's easy to go look, but 800 grand, and I didn't take a wage for a couple of years, and I didn't, it was as a one-man show, and I was paying contractors, and, like I say, it was me and 4 friends from Calgary that basically they had no choice. They made them invest in me. They just couldn't believe I was coming out of retirement to work again. So
plenty of sweat equity as well. Well, I don't know if your wife's anything like mine. If this works out, then she'll be asking you why you didn't put more in. But
no, she, I've been doing this financial stuff for a long time. She just seemed not know it. She's great. She's just
Very good. All right.
That would probably not. She doesn't quite know that, I don't think.
All right. Well, that's a good, excuse me, good positive note to end on. I get the idea. I understand what you propose to do. I understand that you've raised the money to do it. So keep us posted. It's interesting, and we'll see what the truth machine turns up, and very best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and you stay safe, and we'll see you out there somewhere. And, why don't you come up for a site tour? I'll be doing site tours this year. I don't know if you have any plans coming up north, if they let us travel and all, but I know I've been doing lots of analyst calls, and that's where I'm driving it now, is to try and fill in a more of an institutional, because I didn't have any, but now I probably have, I don't know, 30% now. So I'm going to start doing some tours, and like I say, come on up, have a look, see what we've done. I want to mention one other thing before you cut me off, because I'm the salesman.
Go ahead.
Another thing I think people should be aware of this exciting story is to just look at my board of directors and see, there's nobody original from the original company, but you look at the quality of names that have actually, chosen to help me out with this. They don't need to be dealing with some crazy guy. I mean, you got John Williamson on there, you got Ernie Mass, I got Steve Stein. These are guys that have all built major companies. So I think that's a good. Shareholders should feel good about that when you look at the shoulders I sit on. So anyways, that's just put a plug in for those guys, and I really appreciate the help that they've been giving me too.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks again. You've been a good sport with some tough questions here. Best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you. Take care of yourself. Have a great day.
You too.
All right.